Welcome to Nobilis Erotica, the best science fiction and fantasy erotica anthology podcast in the known universe. This month, a cyborg threesome. This is episode 484. I am your host, Nobilis Reed. Our author this month is Genevieve Amsterdam, an urban fantasy and space opera author. She lives in the Pacific Northwest and spoils relatives' cats to make up for being too allergic to have her own. Our narrator, Louise Cooksey, is an Audible-approved narrator available on Amazon's ACX. In her very little free time, she loves to read, knit, and play video games. This episode is sponsored by Bloom Intimate Audio Stories at bloomstories.com. Bloom makes a wide variety of audio content to honor your personal journey toward sexual wellness. Bloom Intimates are stories with plot-based realistic narratives voiced by professional, passionate voice actors. Some of these sync with Lovense Bluetooth sex toys, so you can experience the action as it happens. Bloom Play Sessions are guided tracks carefully designed to help you slow things down and spice things up in the bedroom, with or without a partner. Bloom Wind Downs are chill relaxation tracks you can rely on to quiet your mind any time of day. Sign up for free at bloomstories.com and listen to samples of hundreds of different episodes. If you want more, which I think you will, use promo code NOBILIS to save up to 50% on a premium subscription. Here we go.
3 Installs by Genevieve Amsterdam. Away from the chatter and chaos contained within the new clinic and dorm building, where she and her romantic partner Pyrus were uninstalling any of the nanite super soldiers, known as installs, who cared to desert and find them. She was facing the wrong way to charge her own nanites using her carbon composite wings, as she stood at the scratched and sagging porch rail, but she lofted them open anyway, feeling the stretch of them. It helped to have her conception of her body form such a mismatch to when she stood here as a child when her family was all alive, before she'd been infected with nanites as a civilian, and first sought out to sabotage and then unexpectedly befriended those installs. It cut her ghost down to something manageable. Pyrus approached, his electronic system brushing across hers for no data in particular, in a gesture that had become deeply intimate between them, as sexual as a caress across the small of her back. She half-folded her wings in invitation, and he pressed there against her back where she could stretch back and feel his shoulders and arm with the wings' ribs and temps. "Come to cause me trouble, have you, Praetor?" Pyrus settled his hands on her hips. She felt him watching through her system's data as the flush started low and spread through her body, which only made it more delicious. "Praetor's the one they protect. I think you'll find the term you're looking for is Praetorian Guard." "Oh, I'm sorry." Genevieve made her voice sweet. "Did I say Praetor? I meant pedant." "Keep giving me lip, slave girl, and you'll get what's coming to you." Pyrus jerked her hips around so she faced him, barely giving her time to sort her wings out so they weren't smashed against the railing. The way he growled it, she could barely keep herself from arching, grinding into him immediately. But she wanted to draw the game out, enjoy it properly. "Do you promise?" She laughed into the skin at the side of his neck before nipping. "Evening." Another former soldier and their business partner in the clinic, Carex, ambled up with his hands in his pockets and stopped a little way down the front path, as if waiting for something. Genevieve muddled through 2 reactions, first automatically hiding against Pyrus's chest, then rolling back a little, chin high, repudiating the social convention of embarrassment, since Carex was the one doing the interrupting. While Genevieve was still trying to find words for her confusion, Pyrus sighed. "I told you to ask her yourself, which means you need to use your words, Carex." The brush of his exasperation across the words had the weight of the 2 men's decades of friendship. Genevieve wondered how long the laconic Carex had simply waited long enough the more personable Pyrus gave in and arranged things for both of them. Carex grunted and ducked his head, but then he did come out with it. "Is this a private game, or can someone else join tonight? Iriope says you two sometimes invite guests." Whatever Genevieve had been expecting, it hadn't been that. "Just tonight?" she asked, more a stalling tactic while she pulled her thoughts together than anything. His phrasing already made it clear enough that this was about sex, not anything more serious. She'd always felt a bit of a spark of attraction to him, but she and Pyrrhus were exclusive except for guests. And at the base where they'd met, Carrick's had been so damn discreet, though it was always a safe guess to assume anyone with biological drives and an attraction to her gender might go to Iriopi to help get those drives met. She'd never even considered his own attraction in turn. Just tonight. Carrick's made it to the porch, halted on the creaking boards some distance from them. His stance held a diffidence she'd rarely seen in him. For all his laconic tendencies, he was usually so confident as to frequently tip over into asshole. Maybe again later if you enjoy it. Genevieve checked Pyrrhus's face for his reaction. He smiled lopsidedly and shrugged. Up to you. I have no objections to sharing if you'd enjoy it. He shifted, pressing more directly against her thigh so she could feel that he emphatically had none. Well, their particular game could certainly accommodate 3 as well as 2, which made the heat between Genevieve's legs shiver up to a new pitch. But there was one thing she still wanted to be sure of. She disentangled herself reluctantly from Pyrrhus to stand before Carrick's. You're not interested despite me, are you? If it's Pyrrhus you want, and since we're mostly exclusive, I'm the price you have to pay. Genevieve. There was a half-incredulous chuckle to Carrick's voice. I like women. Pyrrhus knows. You can ask him. What that meant for her made her blush, and Carrick's gently cupped her cheek and brushed his thumb along the line of heat. Sure, she said. Come play tonight. She held out her hands to catch his. Have you had a threesome before? Carrick's shook his head reluctantly, and Genevieve looked to Pyrrhus. He'd handled this part before, and she was especially glad to leave it to him now, since it had been some time since they'd been in this position, the first time with a new guest. He dipped his chin to her in acknowledgement. Long, long ago, an ex-girlfriend and I hired a professional, so I got some best practices laid out plainly for me. He settled as a solid presence against her back once more, her wings folded between them. Back when pregnancy and disease was something we ever had to think about, so that removes a swath of necessary ground rules. He chuckled, but a frown flickered through Carrick's expression. Mourning those days of innocence before he'd become an install, perhaps? The nanites that healed them also had been designed to make them all infertile. But Pyrrhus was continuing. Any limits you want to set before the heat of the moment? Genevieve tried to give that serious thought, but her mind got rather sidetracked along the way, just with the picture of it. She wanted to see Carrick's face at the moment he relinquished control enough to shut her over into coming. She was sure of that. Build from there. And perhaps it was better to leave aside most of their favorite power play, rather than roll it out with Carrick's for the first time. Nothing rough, just dirty talk, I think. That still do it for you, Carrick's? I don't want to be rough, he murmured, and set his palms flat against her stomach. He slipped them down, then up, coming up beneath the fabric of her jacket and shirt to leave only the thinner barrier of her bra between his touch and her nipples. Sensation buzzed up, a slower burn than his teeth there might have kindled, but still delightful. Behind her, Pyrrhus closed his fingertips tight, digging into the base of her wings where they met the muscles of her back. And oh, that was electric. Only Pyrrhus touches my wings, she said on a gasp, without any intentionality, the request just slipping out. But that was the language their particular intimacy had been built on, the exquisite understanding that she'd been able to foster in him of how the wings were alien to her, and so much a part of her at the same time. She wasn't sure if she could convey it to anyone else, and she was sure she didn't want to. That was theirs. Carrick's chuckled, a noise of pure surprise. Of course, he agreed. She could see in his face he wouldn't feel the loss, because he didn't understand the tangled web of meaning around wings for her. His thumbs circled along the side and undercurve of her breasts in tandem, slow and easy. Well then, Genevieve made a warm sound in her throat. I know what Pyrus likes. What would you like?
You,
Carrick said, giving her a wicked grin. Which was flattering, but not actually that helpful. You've got to give me more than that, Genevieve teased, pretending to pull away.
I want to be buried to the hilt in you,
Carrick said, low and all in a rush, shifting his hands down to grab her ass and draw her up against him. She loved the strength of his arms pressed against her body, all down her side. That seemed to have used up all his confidence for the moment, however, as he froze awkwardly with her so close, and looked to Pyrus as if Carricks couldn't quite believe Pyrus wasn't hauling off and punching him for saying such a thing.
Me first,
Pyrus said, his cool, collected tone layered over a growl now.
Before I start pimping her out to random soldiers who walk by.
If she hadn't been wearing pants, Genevieve knew her inner thighs would have been slick by now, the wetness spreading between them with each involuntary shift of her weight, roll of her hips. Please, sir, soldiers are so violent. He'll fuck me so hard.
You're begging to be fucked. You need to be fucked so hard you can't walk tomorrow.
Pyrus growled the words against her ear, jerked down the zipper at the back of her jacket, and Carrick stepped back far enough she could shuck it off her arms. Her shirt and bra would be easier to remove with her wings in, so Pyrus folded them with his hands, leaving her little more to do than tuck them away into her bag. Carrick seemed a little taken aback, but Pyrus got a good hold on the fabric at the base of her neck and yanked back with his forearm in the small of her back, shoving her breasts out, and Carrick's gaze settled there and his smile returned. Bed, Genevieve breathed, urging them both on. She wanted their hands on her body properly, all over her body while she had something to grind against. Pyrus kissed the side of her neck behind her ear, so sweet, before he let her go so she could walk inside. That made her wetter than anything yet, as it allowed her to revel in the swooping, soaring feeling of the dirty talk, knowing she was tethered, always and forever, to the rock-solid foundation of his love and kindness. She shrugged out of her shirt along the way and dropped it somewhere on the stairs, leaving her bra for one of the men to take care of. They did similarly with their own shirts, meeting her at the foot of the bed in her and Pyrus's room. She traced the familiar contours of Pyrus's abs, teasingly dragging fingertips down past his navel and then jerking them away. She didn't want to ignore Carrick's, though, and she turned to him next, reveling in her curiosity. Both men were ribbed, but the lines of Carrick's abs, the deeper brown to his skin, they were new and exciting. She ghosted fingers along his sides, up to his back, to feel the different play of muscles there as she drew them closer together. She hadn't even considered his scars there, where his wings had been cut out, and his flinch startled her. She dropped her hands instantly, bracketing forefinger and thumb into his waistband, finding the bones along his hips. He joined a kiss, a slow exploration of tongue, deepening as he found his equilibrium. She broke it first, nipping at his lower lip to see if he'd read the hint. He did, got hers between his teeth, hard, so she could gasp out loud as Pyrus's lips and then teeth found the meat of the join between her shoulder and neck. Pyrus popped open the clasp, and she shrugged out of her bra between them both, every movement rubbing her ass against a groin or nipples against a chest.
Why aren't you on your hands and knees?
Pyrus drew her back from Carrick's, and then stepped back enough to grant her space to wiggle out of pants and underwear. She made sure to roll her body back up, giving Carrick's another show of her breasts. When she'd straightened, Pyrus got a good grip on her hair at the nape of her neck, pausing a beat for her to anticipate him and move with the shove, then threw her onto the bed. She got up on her knees, forehead to the blankets, and reached to rub her clit as Pyrus climbed up behind her.
Wings,
he snapped, and she drew in a deep breath and held it as she resisted unfurling her wings for 1, 2, 3 heartbeats, the anticipation of sensation curling up and blazing high. Then she pushed to her hands and snapped her wings out, unfolding them wide across the bed. He got a grip at their roots and slammed into her at the same time. She gasped, despite being wet, adjusting her ankle, and he found a rhythm using his hold on her wings to drive him in even harder. And it was so purely yes. She tried to pant the word, but she might not have managed it. Carrick's, she mustn't forget him. She found him, stroking his cock slow and steady. She freed a hand to gesture him to come closer so she could take him in her mouth. But then Pyrrhus made her gasp again, and she closed her eyes to savor the sensation. When she opened them again, Carrick's was no closer. She felt like she was being a bad host, but she was much too distracted at the moment to figure out some other way to draw Carrick's in. Pyrrhus's speed was steady, steadily fast, deliciously so. But Genevieve felt his inevitability sooner than she'd expected. Clench on her wings lightening up just before his last slam in, muscles tight as he spent deep inside her. His speed must mean he was enjoying the audience. He rested a palm on her back between her wings to catch his breath before pulling out and away and flopping back on the bed. "Come here," Genevieve invited Carrick's. She eased herself back onto her back on the blankets as well, up on her elbows to give clearance for her wings. "Your turn. Fuck me like a whore." Carrick's prowled in, leaned over, thumbs skimming up her inner thighs. But he was softly gentle and so frustratingly silent. She was starting to lose some of the height she'd built with Pyrrhus inside her. "Tell me what a soldier's whore I am." "You see a soldier, and you're already dripping wet, imagining when you can spread your legs for him." Pyrrhus, though clearly dozy, eased over to lie close enough to lean in and kiss her shoulder. Then he settled back, head pillowed on his arm, to watch them, eyes half-lidded. Genevieve spread her legs exactly as he said, and Carrick's climbed onto her. The angle to see his face pushed her down, and she took a moment to fold her wings away so she could lie back. He looked down at her for a beat, feasting his eyes, and one side of his mouth drew upward in a grimace of apology. "You're too beautiful to call a whore." Genevieve put up her hands to cup the sides of his head, fingers lacing into his hair, still perfectly black at the sides, the new gray mostly visible in his part. "I can't argue with a compliment like that, can I?" She laughed to cover her disappointment and banked her own fire a little so she could kiss him with sweetness and help him position himself and slide in smooth and easy. As he thrust, slow rhythm to match how he'd touched his cock in watching them, his gaze grew steadily more unfocused. As the ground Genevieve had gained toward climax slipped away from her slowly but surely, light frustration curled in to fill the empty space. She wasn't going to fake it, even for a guest. Surely they could meet in the middle somewhere. "What's in your head?" She ran her touch up his sides, hoping he'd speak without second-guessing himself and give her something to actually work with. "Making a baby." Carrick's grunted, all in a rush, as if the admission had indeed sneaked around some mental block while he wasn't looking. Now that Genevieve could work with. In fact, it was a delightful image, when she embroidered it a little in her imagination. The angle wasn't right for the kind of grind she wanted to go with the thoughts, so Genevieve got her hand down and let the words spill free as Carrick's built up his face. "If I fall pregnant, the mistress of the house will be sure to dismiss me. Please, you can't. If you fill me with your baby and march away to the front. Please, with both your cum and his, I can't help but get knocked up." He must have been listening, because at that last, Carrick suddenly slammed home and groaned. Genevieve watched his face just as she'd imagined, and she found such surprise there, like his reaction to her images had caught even him off guard. He collapsed down enough to rest his forehead against her shoulder. "I'm sorry, I was trying to wait. You haven't—" "Close," Genevieve murmured, because she was, filled to bursting with the amazing feeling of having been able to push him past his best-laid plans of waiting and whatever else had been locked away silently in his head. That amazement was worth a little extra effort. She pushed him back up a little and seized one of his hands, orienting the heel of it the way she needed without apology. Pyrrhus would have been able to do this on his own, but she didn't mind providing the guest with direction. Carrick seemed bemused, but he let her use his hand as she would, and she closed her eyes and ground on it.
"Soldiers, whore,"
Carrick said, a growl of his usual asshole flavor coming back into his voice. Yes, there it was. Genevieve groaned through her own last jerk to tight muscles through her entire body, and then released to a rolling wave of pleasure that washed through her and left behind a feeling of her practically glowing in its wake. Carrick let himself down on her other side, and after her breathing had evened and she'd savored the most intense period of that glow, Genevieve turned into Pyrrhus and put a hand out to tug Carrick's into spooning her.
"Nah,"
he said, and pushed himself languidly up off the bed. Genevieve went back to her elbows. "We're not kicking you out," she said, lifting to a question a little at the end. She thought that's what this was, not him planning to clean up and return.
"I sleep better alone."
Carrick's wasn't entirely back to full confident asshole, because his smile was lopsided and apologetic still.
"Thanks for..."
He gestured vaguely.
"Making him use his words,"
Pyrrhus suggested on a chuckle, apparently awake enough to be paying attention. Carrick flicked him an exasperated look.
"That too. But really, thank you for not giving up on me, or giving up on getting what you wanted too."
He leaned in to press a kiss to her lips, and at this point, the light sweetness was exactly what Genevieve wanted.
"That was amazing. Could we do it again sometime?"
"Yes, please," Genevieve said fervently. She cast a glance to Pyrrhus, who let a grin, a full shit-eating grin, serve as his own answer. She laughed as she let herself back down and pressed skin to skin with Pyrrhus as Carrick let himself out. She could clean up a little later.
"You're a miracle worker, my love,"
Pyrrhus murmured into her hair.
"I wonder if he's ever admitted that to anyone before."
Pure selfishness, because I hadn't come yet. Genevieve huffed a gentle laugh. She let her eyes slip closed and reveled dozily in satisfaction and connection with Pyrrhus. She would remember that feeling, of pushing for what she wanted, and what Carrick's wanted at the same time, not just for the next time they played, but outside of sex as well. Carrick's was helping them keep the clinic running, so now she knew the shape of the feelings beneath his laconic asshole behavior. When necessary, she'd push until she found them.
And that's our story. Join a sexy sisterhood of magic and steel in their struggle to protect the innocent from sexual oppression and the mad desires of the cruel, the wasteful, and the corrupt. Born from the imagination of popular erotic fan artist T. Cat, Sisters of Rapture is a 40-page RPG supplement compatible with 5th edition, detailing the exploits of a sect of warrior priestesses who fight against the forces of darkness with magic blade and raw sexual power, all in the name of divine love. Written, developed, and lavishly illustrated by T. Cat, Sisters of Rapture is an homage to the beautiful and powerful female figures that have graced the canvases of fantasy artists for a century, and are an indelible part of the pop culture landscape. Available from Fantastic Gallery on Drive-Thru RPG in both PDF and print-on-demand formats. Versions are available for OGL 3.5, Pathfinder 1st Edition, and the Modern Path 2.0 in addition to 5th Edition. Add a little spice to your fantasy RPG with the Sisters of Rapture. If you'd like to get an ad-free version of this podcast, head to patreon.com/nobilis. As a supporter, you will have access to a personal RSS feed that you can drop into your podcatcher. And if you want monthly bonus content, bump up your support to $3 a month. Remember to pick up Monster Whisperer 2nd Class in your favorite ebook retailer or on the Riverdale Avenue Books website, or pick up the audiobook on Audible, Amazon, or Apple. Your support will help ensure this series continues. You have been listening to the Nobilis Erotica podcast. Theme music is composed and performed by Mass Relay. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. Until next time, listen hard.